All right, I think we're live. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. I want to spend some time this morning talking about our proposed 2026 budget. You're going to hear more about that next week in my annual budget address. In that address, you're going to hear a lot about what we call our big three. We always like to talk about, which is, of course, public safety, streets and infrastructure, and then, of course, quality of life. And so that will be a big theme of our budget again this year, my final budget of my term. This year, we really focused on the budget being, as cliche as it may sound, a one-team effort, because this is by far the most challenging budget that I've had to work through in my 7 years, now my 8th budget that we've had to present. But we want to spend some time talking about the impact of a specific bill that was passed last legislative session. That's Senate Bill 216, because that specific bill has forced us to make some changes to our budget, and we want to talk about that a little bit today. Senate Bill 216 is a bill that capped property tax growth and was passed last session. And that bill caps property tax growth not just for individual properties, but for the entire community. So it permanently reduces the amount of revenue that the city receives from property taxes. That affects us because we've been growing at a rate here in Sioux Falls, and really in Lincoln and Minnehaha counties, at a rate that's higher than what the legislature capped us at with SB 216. So because of this, because we're growing at a rate that's greater than what that bill capped us at, we are needing to cut some operating expenses in the city by roughly $8 to $10 million over the next 3 years is what we're targeting. So I want to show you what that kind of looks like with this slide here. So our 2025 total budget is $773 million. So some people have said, well, let's use $8 million. $8 million is 1% of the city budget, right? Well, that's kind of misleading, because as you can see on the screen, our budget is divided into different, buckets, as we call them. In the general fund budget is where property taxes fall into. So our property taxes, the portion of your property taxes that you pay as residents, they go into that general fund budget. So they don't go into the capital fund, they don't go into the enterprise fund, they just go into that small portion of the fund. So the general fund was in 2025 was $250 million, right, of the $773 million. So 64% of that $250 million is for personnel expenses, for our staff, the costs of our people. So the remaining 36%, so that cost of doing business section there, that is for the cost of running the city, right? That's like for ensuring someone picks up the phone when you call 911, right? It's for street maintenance, for snow removal, for pothole patching, asphalt programs. It's for our inspectors to, take care of all the commercial and residential building projects that we're seeing as we grow at the rate we're growing. It's for mosquito control programs that we know are very important based on the plague-like mosquitoes we had last year for about a week. It's all those things that fall into that. So when you look at that bucket, the cost of doing business bucket, cutting $8 to $10 million out of our budget is really cutting about 11% of that bucket. So it's a pretty significant budget exercise that we've had to go through to try and find an 11% savings or reduction in that area. So this has been a really challenging thing to do. So I want to pause, and acknowledge, though, that there is a need for smart and strategic property tax reform. As a property tax payer, I understand that. Personally, as someone who doesn't have any control over the property tax system, or very little, I feel that the need for the reform really needs to fall where it's needed most, which is those on fixed incomes, seniors. It needs to be much more targeted than the blanket approach that we're taking now. The unique thing about property taxes is this: you get an assessment in the mail and it says, hey, it's a big number. And wow, this big number went from big number last year to bigger number this year. If you got your sales tax bill once a year and says, wow, I paid this much in sales taxes last year and I paid this much in sales taxes this year, I guarantee we'd be talking about inflation as the big thing we'd be going after instead of property taxes, because groceries are more, and cars are more, and wood is more, and everything, clothing is more because of inflation and so forth. So that's what's unique about property taxes. That's why it's kind of been in the crosshairs. But I think we need to really look at a much more targeted approach to reform, and I hope that the legislature is thinking that way as well. So on the next slide, in response to that, SB 216, we've focused on what we've called recalibrations, not necessarily cuts, but just changes on how we have to deliver services to the community. It's not easy to do that because we are already doing more with less here in Sioux Falls. So of the 212 largest cities in the U.S., and I'll share this slowly so you guys that are writing this down can get this. Of the 212 largest cities in the U.S., Sioux Falls ranks 14th in the lowest total local government expenditures per capita. Okay? So that includes city, county, and school district spending. So that's a very, very important stat. It's another way of saying that is that we operate extremely lean in Sioux Falls. 14th leanest in the country of the 212 largest cities in the country. So to try and cut 11% when you're the 14th leanest city in the country is not easy and challenging. And so we're balancing that while also being, based on U.S. Census Bureau data from 2020 to 2024, the 7th fastest growing city per capita in the country. So 14th leanest, 7th fastest growing, okay? So double whammy, right? And we're trying to find 11%. So in 2026, our budget, we have identified $6 million in permanent reductions through this recalibration process. And we just want to highlight a few of those today that are part of the budget process. And so I'm not going to get into real specifics on these because you're going to hear the specifics on these in our budget process, right? So we'll have budget hearings over the next week or two, or actually next month or two. So I'm going to stay out of the weeds on those. I have some of my directors here that can speak to those, but I'm just going to cover them broadly. But the point of this today is to let people know that, there's no solutions, only trade-offs, right? So the trade-off for SB 216 is that we have to reduce some services to make up the $8 to $10 million. And these are some of those. First off, in our snow operations, we're going to be phasing in city-owned and operated motor graders and phasing out some of our contracted work, which could result in some longer snow clearing times, but it wouldn't affect the quality of how we do snow removal. So we'll still do the curb to curb and how we do snow plowing, but it could result in slightly longer snow clearing times. Our Siouxland libraries, we are going to reduce daily service by up to 2 hours, opening an hour later and closing an hour earlier in all of our Sioux Falls locations and in Brandon. We will be closing the 3 school-based clinics that are run by Falls Community Health. Those are operated out of our schools. Less than 5% of our patients that we see in those clinics are actually kids. And so when I say school-based clinics, don't think that we're robbing a bunch of kids from getting access to health care. That has been actually a poor performing part of our clinical portfolio. We don't see a lot of kids actually in those school-based clinics. So we've decided to close those as a cost-saving measure. This one, our outdoor pools, we're planning starting next year to close those after the first weekend in August, all of our outdoor pools. We see roughly almost a 70% drop in attendance after the first weekend in August in all of our outdoor pools. And we see a loss in staff. We see a huge drop in attendance, so we're going to be closing all of our outdoor pools after the first weekend in August. Our Parks and Recreation team is going to be permanently phasing out all of our non-refrigerated ice rinks starting in 2026 that we operate in the city. We've seen declining attendance in those and really just unreliable operating days in those. The weather is increasingly challenging to keep ice on those. The cost per attendee honestly can range anywhere from $30 an attendee to $170 an attendee just to keep those rinks going. So we're going to be phasing those out. You've maybe heard we're reducing the community subsidy agreements that we provide. Those have kind of just been slowly added to and kind of been hung on to in our budget, where we provided subsidies to various nonprofits over the years. We're going to be reducing those by 28%. We're going to be making some staff impacts in the city too. We're eliminating 4 positions that are currently open in the city, in our operations team, our library team. A position in my office we're going to be eliminating in the mayor's office. We're going to be eliminating some positions due to some loss of grant funding and not filling those. We are going to really focus on reducing overtime across our departments. So overtime isn't just done willy-nilly. It's used because the need is there, whether that's with fire or police or in our street department or our parks department. We're going to make a conscious effort to reduce overtime as much as possible. We're certainly restricting employee travel and training as much as we can, much more than we ever have before. And we're also holding our vacant positions open much longer. So if someone leaves the city, if we have turnover, we're not immediately filling the positions. We're going to keep them open. We're going to assess if we need to backfill that position or if it can stay open. And that does not include, however, our public safety positions. We lose a firefighter, metro operator, police officer. We will immediately, obviously, want to fill those again. And so those are just a handful of things. There's going to be more other things that will come out in our budget process that you'll hear about. But it's hard because of the rate that we're growing right now and the historic rate that we're growing, including in our metro area. This is Sioux Falls' approach to this. Brandon, Harrisburg, they're all facing the same thing right now. They're doing this same exercise. Quite honestly, in T and Harrisburg specifically, their percentage of recalibrations is going to be much greater than ours because they're growing at a higher clip than we are percentage-wise. And so when you talk about, hey, Paul, we want to, people always, if I had $1 for every time someone says, hey, Paul, we want a Trader Joe's, or, we want a Raising Cane's, or people always coming up to me with, when are these things going to come here? Those things don't come to stagnant cities. They come to growing cities. Those sorts of economic development happen in growing markets. And so bills like SB 16 are really meant to stifle growth and limit growth. And so I think it's very important to just remember that old adage that there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs. So the trade-off that we have today is that property tax reduction or elimination, if we don't have a replacement for that lost revenue in some way, it leads to a reduction in city services. And so when some of these get made public and my email box starts blowing up and my Twitter feed starts getting lit up about Paul hates pools and Paul hates libraries, I need you to contact your legislators and I need you to see how they voted on some of these things and talk to them, because I don't want to be doing these things. I don't want to have to be making some of these cuts. And trust me, we looked at a lot of other things. These are the best of the worst. And there were some other very, very difficult things that we analyzed that we simply couldn't do. You know what we didn't talk about today was a lot of fee changes, right? Because what we wanted to avoid as much as possible is raising fees, putting this 8 to 10 million on the back of the taxpayers, right? And so that was a conscious effort by us. So tough decisions, but important decisions to try and support a growing community that's growing at a very, very rapid clip, but also dealing with a city and a state that is had it with property tax growth and wants to do something about it, and we're certainly sympathetic to that as well. So that's what we wanted to share with you today. More of this is going to come out in the next couple months through our budget discussion. So that's what I have. I would certainly take questions that you have, and some of my city leadership is here if there's some things I can't answer. So, yeah, Trevor.
You say this isn't something you want to do. What happens if you don't do this? What happens if you make the choice to say, you know what, this is a frustrating thing, but we're gonna keep moving ahead?
If we don't make these changes?
Yeah.
Well, it's like if, you and your wife, if you lose your job and you have a car payment and you have to feed yourself and you have an apartment that you have to rent, and you don't have the money, you have to probably get rid of your car, get a different apartment. I mean, you have to make the changes. We simply don't have the revenue to support these services. So if the things that you heard today, the city council will ultimately be the deciding factor on some of these. And if they say, hey, we can't live with these changes, that's fine. Then we need to find 8 to 10 million somewhere else. So then we will look at different things, reducing, our street maintenance program, for instance, or, one of the things Mark and I talked about is changing our snow alerts from 3 inches to 4 inches. And Mark said to me, Paul, we tried that one time when Mayor Munson was mayor, and he told me after we did that, don't ever let me do that again. And so that one went off the table. It would have saved us a couple $100,000 if we changed the criteria for snow alerts, but we decided against that. So those are the type of things we talked about. And so if we don't do these, Trevor, we got to do something else. It's a budget just like a household budget. You got to find things that will work. Yeah.
You're a business guy, and you're talking to a lot of journalists who we've seen. When the Argus leader said, "Hey, we're getting less revenue," one of the first things to go was people, mm-hmm. and they reduced employees, and I know that happens in a lot of businesses with belt tightening. I noticed that the employee salary portion of the little rectangles was grayed out, like not considered at all. I'm not saying I want people in the city to lose their jobs, but why wasn't that considered in terms of, finding efficiencies in the current employees and administration rather than cutting services that affect the whole community?
Well, first off, I shared with you several positions that we didn't renew, didn't fill, right? 4 positions that we aren't fulfilling, 4 additional positions we let go, overtime that we're cutting. What you'll see in our budget presentation is that our employees per capita is going to drop again for the next 3 or 4 years. So the number of employees serving the city per capita has dropped steadily over the last 2 decades. And we, based on our peer cities, we are way understaffed for a city of our size. We cannot afford to have less employees in this city. We just can't. And we have 1.9% unemployment in our community right now. So at the core of city government is people delivering services. We can't outsource wastewater treatment. We can't outsource police officers. We can't outsource lawn mowing to third-party organizations. We have to have people doing some of this stuff. So you will find me always sticking up for our employees and our staff and the human resources that are delivering the services. So city council may feel otherwise. That bucket was off limits for me because I think our employees are our most important asset. And so I felt some of these other small changes were much more palatable than reducing the existing city staff, which is also already operating at a very low per capita number.
Since I've got it, My understanding is that the effects of 216 actually don't take place for a while. They're still they're down the road a little bit. Am I right about
2027.
2027? I mean, you'll be gone. I mean, you could have just punted on this deal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, our city motto is taking care of today for a better tomorrow. And so you're right. The longer we wait, the deeper the wound. And so 8 to 10 million, 6 million in this budget would turn into probably 8 million in the 27 budget. And so some of these things are things we just have to do sooner rather than later. And so thus the need to start some of this process now versus waiting. We still, quite honestly, John, we're unclear with how the state is even going to operationalize SB 216. They have not even given us good direction yet. So we are being anticipatory with this when we still even haven't got good direction on how they're going to apply SB 216 across the board with the assessments to properties. So that's been frustrating for us, quite honestly, because it's a bill and a law without a plan yet for implementation. But we're not going to wait for that. We have to be prepared for it.
I'm going to tie these two questions together because I think other people want to ask a question. But you say we're the 14th out of the 250 largest growing cities. I mean, you're comparing us to like Chicago and New York and places that a lot of people in Sioux Falls would say, I'm glad. That's good, right? I mean, we don't want to be those cities because they're teetering on bankruptcy in a lot of cases. And then you look at, this is where I'm tying this together is, but you look at the like the clinics and the schools, the pools, and the inefficiencies that were probably operating under those, you've looked at those. And do you agree that maybe some people would say, yeah, if they were inefficient and weren't being used, maybe it's a good thing to be shutting these down?
For sure. There are some good changes that are coming out. It's forced us to look at things to say, hey, maybe some of these things could have happened before. But I will tell you, some of these things people are going to be pissed about, okay? We're bonding for a $20 million outdoor pool at Keene Park, and now we're saying we're going to close it the first week in August. That's just tough. It's just tough for me to stand up here and say that that's a good idea. I hate saying that. I hate implementing a lot of these. Tomorrow I have a meeting with all the providers at those school-based clinics. And I have to look at them face to face and say, your clinics are closing. And they are not happy. And so that's going to be a challenging meeting. You're welcome to sit. No, you're not welcome to sit in on it. But I have to say, your clinics have not been efficient for us over the years. And I know your heart's in the right place, but as a business person, this is not a good business decision. And people always ask me, are you running City Hall like a business? And I say sometimes, because this is an example of, yes, I am running it like a business because we have to cut things that aren't efficient. But if we truly were running it like a business, we wouldn't have pools at all. We wouldn't do transit. We wouldn't have a public health department because none of these things make any money. We subsidize all of it. So it's like we're kind of running it like a business. So,
with regard to the 3 clinics set to close, I wonder if you or perhaps a director could talk about, roughly is fine, how many people regularly get medical care there? Do you know?
So I believe we see about 20,000 people total visits at Falls Community Health, okay, every year. About 10% of those visits happen at the school-based clinics. And of those 10%, less than 5% of those 10% are kids, okay? So it's a very small number. So only 10% of the visits happen at the school-based clinics, and of those, only 5% of those 10% are kids. So it's adults. If anybody who's using it, it's adults, and they can come to Falls Community Health and get the same level of care, probably better care because there's more access to different imaging and other things there that we don't have at the school-based clinics. So it's the same services. So it's efficiency. They're satellites, basically. And some are less than a mile away from downtown. The original intent of opening those was to serve kids, and that vision just hasn't been realized. The dental clinics will continue to stay open there. Because that's where we see the kids. And that's where the need is in the dental work amongst the kids. And that's where we only solely see kids there.
Before the legislative session, you talked about the things the legislature could do, and you focused on growth, helping you manage growth. They turned around and did the exact opposite. They made it more difficult. What's the solution there? It feels like the legislature is trying to control local government. Do you feel that's the way it is, and how can that change?
Well, you will never find me not advocating for local control. And I think there's no one who knows how to run their city better than the mayor and the city council of the city. And SB 216, the mayor and the city council of the city were never even consulted on it. The finance director was never even consulted on it. So the impacts of it, we're left holding the bag. Think if the converse was true. Think if I passed a law that said, state, we're going to strip the gasoline tax and the wheel tax and the such and such from you, and you got to figure out what to do with it. Doesn't affect me at all because it's not in my budget, but you got to figure it out. That's exactly what's happening here. They don't deal with property tax. They don't get any property taxes. They can just cut it, be the heroes to their constituents, but then we're left holding the bag. It's just not fair. We need to be at the table on those discussions because it affects us. It affects school boards. It affects county commissions. But we're not at the table on the discussions. So that's hard. It's hard for me to deal with that. So local control is very important. In fact, there was a bill this session that provided a revenue replacement opportunity, a local option sales tax, voter-approved local option sales tax. Didn't even get out of committee. So, you know, we're looking for some level of local control. If they're going to take away revenue sources, give us some local control to replace that if our voters want it. And so we're just asking for some help, man, you know, some help, because our growth is not going to slow down. And if you think that just capping property tax and these things is going to stop our growth, it's going to keep coming. So people are still going to keep moving here. So all it's going to do is going to create chaos in the community, and it's going to get worse. And so you look at in Austin, Texas, I was talking to a city councilor from Austin, Texas, and the legislature did this to them many years ago. They capped growth. And you know what happened? The people just kept coming. People didn't stop coming to Austin because the legislature kept property tax growth. The people kept coming. And then the problems came. That's when Austin was good. They wanted to stop it. We don't like this growth in Austin. Well, that didn't stop it. And that led to the homelessness, the crime, the challenges that changed Austin. I don't want to see that, right? So this doesn't work.
Just a quick follow-up. You've taken some criticism for your approach to the legislature. And I haven't done the vote tally in Sioux Falls, but in the Sioux Falls area, there were plenty of legislators who voted for the property tax cap. Do you take some responsibility for not building a better relationship with lawmakers? Or on the other side of that, were you not aggressive enough?
I think I'll turn that around and say I think our voters need to research their representatives and see how they're voting. Are they helping support our airport? Are they voting on local control bills? Are they voting for things like this and understanding the consequences of them? So it's not necessarily the mayor's responsibility to control all the legislators. It's the voters' responsibility to put the right people in peer that represent their interests. And I'm not sure if we've done that recently. And so we have to look at that again and say, hey, we got to make sure the people in Sioux Falls are making sure they're educated on the stances that their legislators take on positions before we send them to peer.
Okay. Yeah, you talk about the issue of kind of feeling left out, not being at the table. I remember having this conversation with Chris Lilla and the director of equalization for the county, and he talked about how there were no lawmakers that approached him. Obviously, maybe you can't control how lawmakers, whether or not they reach out to you, but is there anything you hope for, can plan for the 2026 legislative session in order to have more of a presence in peer? Because I know property tax, it's not an issue that it was solved in 2025. It will be a continual discussion.
Yeah, we've never had a lobbyist in the city of Sioux Falls. We've worked with our chamber and we've worked with other organizations to lobby some of our interests. We have things like this to hopefully get some coverage to say, hey, we're ready to assist. We don't want to be an adversary. We're here to be an ally. We just want to help put pragmatic property tax reform. I get it that there's pressure on legislators to do something about this. Totally get it. Let us help. Let's go to the pain point. The pain point is seniors, fixed income, those people who can. I'm fine with paying more property taxes. This is a great city. I want more culture, more arts, better roads, better plowing, pools to be open all of August. I'm cool with it. And I think a lot of people are. But there's certain people who aren't. And let's not hit a nail with a sledgehammer. Let's focus on where the problem is. And so let us help craft pragmatic legislation that'll work. So I'm here today to say, let Sean Pritchard, our Director of Finance, let our County Commission, let us help be part of the solution, because ultimately we're the ones left holding the proverbial bag when the legislation is passed and having to either implement cuts or recalibrations that affect our community and ultimately our residents. So thank you for being here today and appreciate your questions. You'll hear more about all this in the weeks ahead with our budget. Appreciate it.